I love being outside on a day like today. It gives me a chance to enjoy God's creation, to remind myself of the beauty, the design, the desire that God has for each one of us to enjoy walking together with God. The last several months have been filled with things that try to distract us from God's creation, from the beautiful design that God has, not only for the world, for the universe, but for us as human beings who are made in the image of God. And as we have gone through these things over the past several months, it tries to strike fear into our hearts, bring anger out, get us to turn against one another, and get us to turn against God. I'm so excited that we're at a time right now where God is clearly leading us as a church body into a season of focus, a season where we stop looking at all of the things that are going on and listening to negative rhetoric that is in the news, but instead focusing on the beautiful picture that God has in mind and has in store for us as we choose to walk together with God. The last several weeks have been a little different with the weekend services and even the daily devotions, as I have shared a message from Abilene, Texas, when I was visiting my son. And then we had Frank and Tracy and Tricia share messages with us over the past several weeks, and even write the daily devotions to go along with it. During those weeks, we haven't had videos out there for you to use as discussion videos and along with questions. And now that I'm back, we're putting the discussion videos out there again, but this week is going to be a little different still, because what we're going to start doing over the upcoming weeks here is prepare ourselves for uh, a spiritual journey, a time that God is setting apart in our calendar where we will focus on the picture that God has for us to walk together with God. This spiritual journey is now has a title. We're calling it Imagine Life Differently. And we'll be using the time to transport ourselves from our current day and age with all of the negative things that try to vie for our attention and pull us down. And we will transport ourselves instead to the days of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. We'll start to remind ourselves, look at the picture that God had in mind when God first formed human beings from the dust of the ground and from one another. And as we look at that picture, we will start to see for ourselves that God never gave up on that picture, that God wants us to live, that God wants us to live abundantly, and that God wants us to live eternally with Him. What we're going to do from now until the end of September is prepare ourselves for that spiritual journey, which will take place in October and November. And what I'll be asking you to do in this discussion and reflection video this week is to start preparing yourself for that spiritual journey. There are three things that you can do to really get yourself ready for this, to allow God to work through that time period, to draw you near to God. And those three things are prayer, preparation, and then participation. The first thing that I want to encourage you to do is to pray. I want to encourage you to pray possibly in a way that you have not done before. I'm not going to be giving you any rote prayers so that you can repeat after me. I'm not going to be asking you to pray for a specific list of things so that you can check them off and then just kind of ask God for that task list of things to get done. Instead, what I'm going to ask you to do is to go to God and start talking with God in prayer, in conversation. Ask God how God wants to prepare you for this time together. Ask God what needs to happen with your mind, with your heart, with your schedule, so that as this journey comes about, you are ready to draw near to God and to walk with God through that 2-month time period. Ask God, and then listen. Get a journal and write down what God says to you. Listen to what God has to say and pay attention to where God is leading you. If we allow God to do it, God will lead us where we need to go so that we will draw closer to God and enjoy this journey with God. Begin by praying to start preparing yourself for the journey. The second thing is just that, prepare. Once you've spent time talking to God in prayer, then the question becomes, what does God want you to do to prepare for the spiritual journey that's coming up in the beginning of October? There are lots of things that God might ask you to do. You might be drawn back into prayer on a regular basis because that's what God wants you to do to get ready for this journey. There are going to be lots of tools and resources that the team is putting together to help you on this spiritual journey, and perhaps God wants you to help out in getting those things ready. Maybe God will lead you to work on the building at LifeBridge to start getting things ready. Work on books and resources and printing and copying and getting things ready to distribute. Maybe God is going to be calling you to start making a list of people to invite and prepare for them. Perhaps God wants you to get your home ready. Anything from technology so that you can watch videos like this in the church services, to setting a room aside, apart, so that there are distractions removed from that area, so that when you gather together for worship, perhaps in a special room in your house, that room is filled with worship, is focused on God. And so whatever it is that God calls you to do to prepare, start doing it. We've got several weeks here. We can start to create these tools and resources, clean up our buildings and our houses, get our technology working and ready to go. When the resources become available, we can get those resources and make sure that we've got the books and our journals and all the things that we need to make this journey as powerful as it possibly can be for ourselves individually, for our families and our households where we live, and for the community as we reach out. And let God lead you in reaching out and inviting people to be a part of it. The third thing then is something you can't do in advance. You can simply prepare your mind and your heart and your schedule for it in advance. The third thing is to participate. So when the journey begins, make sure that you've got the time set apart in your calendar, and then show up for the worship services. If you can't make it to the building, or you're in a high risk group and so you want to make sure that you are social distancing, then participate in the worship service online. Watch it on your cell phone or your tablet, or your computer or your television at home. Do whatever you need to do to make sure that you participate in those worship services, that you go to whatever small group discussions God calls you to do, that you read the daily devotions, that you dive into the things that will draw you near to God throughout this journey. And most importantly, when you get to the point in each week where you are taking the scriptures, what was shared with you in the music, what was talked about in the groups, and you apply that to your own life and your own walk, make sure that you take the time to let God show you how you can live out this part of God's design and desire for your life. God really does have a beautiful picture in mind for you and for me. Jesus really did tell us that God desires for us an abundant life, life to the full. Even when the whole world around us seems to be against us, even when pandemics are breaking out and hatred is boiling to the top and rhetoric is tearing one another down, God reminds us that it can be better than this, that it should be better than this, and that God will help us so that it is better than this. God will help us to not only imagine life differently, but to live life differently, living a life walking together with God. Know that as you work through this, that I'm right there with you. I've already begun praying and have been praying for this for a while now, and I will continue to pray for my own preparation in my mind and my heart, as well as for you and for your family, your friends, your neighbors, as we get ready for this spiritual journey. Know that I'm doing my part to prepare for our time together, putting together resources and sermons, lessons, putting together the different things that will help us all to shed the things in this world and to focus on the Lord, walking with God and walking together with each other. And know that I'm already asking God to show me my next steps, how to live out what God is calling me to do as a part of this church body serving you. Know that you're not alone in this preparation, that we're together, and that I'm looking forward to all of us walking together with God.